Welcome to our show, where we dive deep into some of the most intriguing and contentious subjects found in the annals of history. Today, we're peeling back the layers on a topic that's shrouded in mystery and suspicion: the alleged connections between Freemasonry and the worship of Lucifer.
That's right. Our focal point is A.E. Waite's critical examination of the sensational narrative surrounding the so-called New and Reformed Palladium, which some claim is a secretive arm of Freemasonry that supposedly acknowledges and worships Lucifer. But how much of this narrative is real, and how much is simply a modern myth?
We're going to explore claims, stories, and the historical context that shapes these beliefs, while taking a close look at the evidence, or lack thereof, that supports the idea of a dark, hidden agenda within the Masonic tradition. But first, let's establish some definitions for clarity.
Absolutely. Freemasonry is a fraternal organization that traces its origins to the local fraternities of stonemasons, which from the end of the 16th century began to accept any man of good character as a member. Often the organization is noted for its rituals and secretive nature, which has led to a wealth of speculation surrounding its practices. And when we mention Luciferianism, we're talking about a belief system that regards Lucifer not as a symbol of evil, but as a figure representing enlightenment and knowledge.
Right. It's crucial to know that while many anti-Masonic writers have portrayed Freemasonry as synonymous with Satanism, A.E. Waite's work challenges these narratives, arguing that they often rest upon dubious testimonies and recycled occult lore.
Let's dive into our first segment, building the scare story. Waite identifies two prominent forms of what he refers to as modern devil worship. The first is Satanism, which seeks to engage with evil spirits explicitly. The second is Luciferianism, which can be seen as a misinterpreted pursuit of light or knowledge, distinctively different from the malevolence associated with Satanism. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Many anti-Masonic authors equate Lucifer directly with Satan, thereby muddying the waters.
Exactly. This conflation is significant because it reflects a broader Catholic frame of reference that skews perceptions about what these groups actually practice. Waite insists that the consensus among these authors is skewed, a tactic used against the backdrop of rising secularism in the 19th century.
Next, an intriguing part of this narrative is the myth surrounding the Palladian Order. According to anti-Masonic literature, the Palladian Order was a secret group supposedly founded in 18th century France, with origins linked to the Knights Templar and their idol, Baphomet. Baphomet has often been depicted as a goat-headed symbol and is used to represent duality, blending opposite forces, male and female, good and evil.
That's an important visual to keep in mind. The story continues with figures like Albert Pike and Giuseppe Mazzini, who are said to have reformed this organization in the late 19th century, setting it up as a controlling force over what they called universal Freemasonry. It paints a picture of a grand conspiracy.
Which really feeds into that narrative of a hidden hand, doesn't it? But Waite scrutinizes the credibility of these tales. He points out that much of the literature that supports these claims stems from a cyclic pattern found in esoteric texts, where previous works are revisited and repurposed as evidence of the occult.
Now, let's move to our next segment: witnesses for the prosecution. The key accusers of the Masonic Order include figures like Dr. Bataille, who has positioned himself as an infiltrator within these alleged occult lodges. Then there's Diana Vaughan, who has claimed to be a priestess of Lucifer before converting and confessing. However, Waite suggests that many of their narratives seem to borrow from sensationalist literature rather than genuine experience.
Take, for example, Bataille's vivid descriptions of occult rituals he supposedly witnessed, scenes that read almost like the pages of a horror novel. They involve horrific and surreal events, perhaps too extraordinary to be credible. And what's more, these narrations are often recycled tropes found in grimoires, which are basically books filled with magic rituals and spells.
Thus, Waite exposes a pattern. Many of the incidents portrayed by these witnesses hinge on elaborate accounts that bear striking similarities to existing occult writings rather than verified occurrences. When fact-checked, many locations cited turned out to be fictitious or exaggerated.
As we approach our next segment, Waite's cross-examination, we consider his methodology for dismantling these claims. He compares anti-Masonic narratives with the verifiable structure of recognized Masonic organizations.
He scrutinizes dates, locations, and named individuals by consulting independent records. One of his key findings indicates a remarkable lack of credible evidence supporting the existence of a global Palladian directorate that many sensationalists claim operates behind the scenes.
A key takeaway from Waite's findings is that the descriptions of supposed high-level Masonic councils, such as that occurring in Singapore or Calcutta, that the accusers emphasize, do not align with available historical records. Moreover, witnesses often appear unfamiliar with the very rites they claim to have infiltrated, sparking more questions than answers about the authenticity of their claims.
By the end of his work, Waite does acknowledge that weird rituals and fringe occult groups exist, and yes, Catholic Masonic conflicts have historically been intense. However, he draws the essential conclusion that regular Freemasonry, an entity with its structure and beliefs, doesn't engage in a secret cult aimed at Lucifer worship through a Palladian inner order.
That's a polarizing conclusion for such a divided topic. As Waite encourages us, it's vital to question sensationalist narratives and those who propagate them. If a story claims a singular hidden hand orchestrating lavish evil, we should always ask, who benefits from telling this story? How well does their evidence stand up to scrutiny?
Let's segue into our second title for today, Lucifer or Legend, Inside Waite's Critique of Modern Satanism. In this segment, we'll delve deeper into Waite's efforts to differentiate between authentic occult practices and the fabrications that muddied the waters at the end of the 19th century.
Right, and again, we're greeted with incredible tales of Luciferian worship. Picture a doctor declaring he witnessed a ritual involving a 152-year-old female pythoness burning herself alive before a Baphomet idol. It sounds like a scene straight out of a fantasy novel. But again, it leads us to ask, what actually happened?
As we investigate the frameworks that propel these tales, we find that the majority of them emerge from Catholic polemics against Freemasonry, particularly during a time when the Church was faced with critiques of its own credibility in the face of modernity.
Waite emphasizes that many of these accounts likely represent metaphorical attacks rather than factual claims. The intellectual landscape at that time was rife with anti-atheistic sentiments, and various groups used Satan as a catch-all for anything they deemed eroding their moral authority.
Let's examine Dr. Batil. He's touted as a ship's doctor, claiming to have infiltrated various occult lodges and circles across Asia. But Waite argues that Batil's writings read like the cheap thrills of penny dreadful fiction, heightening the sensational elements without genuine substance.
That's right. His histories are filled with striking coincidences, dramatic events, yet they often lack the specific details that a reputable account should convey. Waite's analysis shows that these events often come crumbling down under scrutiny. When he checks into specific locations mentioned, like a charnel pit or a reanimated temple, he finds inaccuracies glaringly apparent.
The same goes for John Kostka, another witness who claims to have had direct experiences with entities claiming to be Lucifer. While Kostka's accounts are more personal in nature, they still spark a whole new set of questions regarding their credibility and authenticity. His experiences seem more like subjective visions rather than solid evidence of organized rituals.
Waite rightly critiques that these personal anecdotes are more about Kostka's psyche than any collective Masonic structure. Kostka's dramatic reinterpretations often serve to paint a more sinister picture when there's little to support it.
As we arrive at the end of our episode, there's much to mull over. Waite's explorations clarify that when we dig deep enough, many sensational claims about so-called devil worship within the ranks of Freemasonry fall apart under scrutiny, revealing their roots in a mix of fiction and prejudice rather than fact.
Before we sign off, listeners, let's take a moment to reflect on the critical lens we applied today. We've discussed how stories of hidden influences, particularly when tied to something as fear-inducing as Satanism, often serve a purpose beyond simple narrative, whether political, religious, or cultural.
Ultimately, it's about understanding that while there may be elements of occultism at play in some spheres, the sweeping conclusion that an entire organization is devoted to dark worship simply does not hold up. We urge you, take a closer look and ask the important questions.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. We hope we've shed some light on the shadows of Freemasonry and the sensationalized narratives surrounding it. Until next time, keep questioning and seeking the truth.